Hello, this webinar is titled News, the Freedom of the Press and News Reporting Hubris. Well, where does the term the press come from? Well, it comes from the 1440s, the Gutenberg printing press invented by Johannes Gutenberg, a German blacksmith and goldsmith that repurposed some equipment to print with. Well, what was the first thing printed on the printing press? Well, it was the Bible, and it became known as the Gutenberg Bible. They printed the most important thing using this new technology in order to advance the most important book. Well, what was freedom of the press in the early days? Well, in the early days, important things were published, like Bibles, books, pamphlets, things that were multiple pages and gave people a contemplative life, things that were significant and important, not newspapers. Well, if that's the case, when was the first American newspaper ever printed? Well, it turns out it was in 1690. It was titled Public Occurrences, both foreign and domestic, and it was 250 years after the printing press was invented. And there's only one edition in this case. Well, when did newspapers become daily? Well, it was in 1702 in England, and the Daily Courant was the first publication, and this was 260 years after the invention of the printing press. What about the first daily newspaper in America? Well, this would have been in 1784, and it would have been the Pennsylvania Packet and Daily Advertiser. And get that last word in this name, advertiser. And this was over 340 years later after the printing press was invented. So for more than 3 centuries, there were things more important to print on a printing press than daily newspapers. You see, in the 18th century, people thought newspapers were of dubious value for conveying ideas or cultivating deeper thinking. Furthermore, newspapers began to be associated with a political party, so everyone knew they were biased and prone not to be accurate in their facts. They pretty much looked like today's National Enquirer with more political content than today's celebrity-driven ones. Meanwhile, people focused on reading books and quarterlies for the extended thinking that was so much more important. Well, in light of all this, news people might consider something from the ancient writings of the Gutenberg Bible that were printed in 1440 in a letter to Romans. Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment. Well, to move on, the First Amendment of the United States says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition their government for a redress of grievances. Well, the realization that is needed is this. Newspaper reporters need a dose of humility. When the First Amendment was written, newspapers were viewed as untrustworthy sources of information and of questionable value. Again, what was considered valuable were books, pamphlets, reprinted sermons, periodicals, and other expanded writing. They were viewed as far more important for deep and reflective thinking and for the cultivation of culture, and that still remains true today. This is even more true with the 24/7 sensationalized news industry. In comparison to other things that people can do to cultivate their minds, the news industry is just simply not that important. I hope this gives you some things to think about. This is U.S. Civics Training. Thanks for listening.